I just forgot to totally talk about tax refunds in Korea. So I actually did a lot of research about this because typically when I go to Korea, I actually don't do any tax refunds. I'm currently a dual citizen, so and my mom, most of my family is actually just U.S. citizens. But since we kind of just feel like we flew to Korea and our family's there, we weren't super aware. Like we never were considered tourists, I guess. So my mom didn't really know that much about getting tax refunds, and I didn't know that much either because of that as well. But when I went to Korea last year with a couple of friends, they were all foreigners, and we were like, okay, we should definitely try to take advantage of this tax refund system. And so that's kind of when I got more familiar with how to get tax refunds, what were the laws, if you're bringing something back, what are the customs rules and things like that. So I was able to apply that as well to my Korea trip this year and apply it to pretty much everything that I bought. So this is just a little bit of information. I highly recommend that you do some research yourself if you're not sure, and I can link down an important document that lists out different customs duties that can be applied to purchases that you make in Korea, because even though you can get tax-free on a lot of purchases that you make in Korea, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can bring it tax-free into the US. You may have to still pay duties on some purchases that you make in Korea. So I can just start from generally how do you get tax refunds. So not all stores are eligible for tax refunds. It's mainly kind of like the big malls or popular tourist destinations like Myeongdong or parts of Hongdae where you're shopping. But what you do is that you can, when you make your purchase, you can ask, is it possible to get tax refund? And when you ask that question, there's like two outcomes that can, or I guess three outcomes that can basically happen. Number one, the store just doesn't provide it. And if that's so, then you'll just buy your purchase, as like a normal person would, and you just wouldn't be able to get any tax refund from that purchase. The second thing that can happen is that you can actually get your tax refund immediately when you make that purchase. So basically when you pay for that purchase, it's going to be the amount with the tax already taken out of it. This method is really only available in that has like a high tourist footprint, I would say. So places like this that you could probably get this is definitely Myeongdong. I think Myeongdong is the best place that you can do that, where stores will automatically give you the tax refund as long as you have your passport. And another really popular place that I love to shop at is in Myeongdong. It's called the Lotte Young Fashion Plaza, I believe. And there they have a lot of young clothing and like shoes and cosmetics and things like that, mainly clothing, but that's another large department store where you can get tax refund immediately. So again, at the counter when you're making your purchase, can I please get a tax refund? They'll ask to see your passport, and then they'll scan your passport, and then they'll charge you for the amount with the tax already taken out of it. And then the last possible way that that the question could be answered is that they say, yes, tax refund is possible, but you need to go to the airport to collect that tax refund. So at the time of purchase, or sometimes you'll make the purchase and you'll go to a separate floor on the mall, for example, if you're shopping at a large department store, you'll get the receipt, and you'll also get a separate tax refund receipt. So I can actually show you typically what that looks like. So for example, this is what it would look like. So in this case, I was just at a regular mall near my house. It wasn't like in Myeongdong or anything. So when I asked for tax refund, they said, yes, it's available. Just please bring your passport and go up to the 10th floor and show them the receipt. So this is just the receipt that I got when I made the purchase of whatever I bought at the mall. And then I went up to the tax refund kind of booth that they have at the mall. And then they gave me this additional receipt. And you can see it says global tax free. And this is the receipt that I would use to actually get my tax refund at the airport. So whenever you go shopping in Korea, you must bring your passport if you're interested in getting a tax refund. And then the second most important thing to remember is that you have to get a separate receipt from the receipt that you get from the store that you bought the goods from. The receipt has to be a global tax refund receipt. You can't scan regular receipts at the tax refund area in the airport. It must be a scan of this global tax refund receipt. So those are the three, options that are kind of available. Again, to recap, number one, they don't offer tax refund. Number two, you automatically get the tax refund at the time of purchase. Or number three, tax refund is available, but you have to collect your tax refund at the airport. So let's say you've completed your Korea trip, you've bought everything, you've collected your tax refund receipts, and you're at the airport. So at the airport, I believe there are two areas of kiosks that are available to receive global tax refunds. So what you do is you'll typically get like a little folder where they'll put your tax refund receipts into, and inside it shows you a little map of the terminals in the Incheon airport and where you can get your tax refund from. So what you would do is you go to the kiosk, you'd select the language that you prefer on the kiosk, and you scan your passport. And if your passport was shown at the time of purchase when you asked for a tax refund, the list of things that you purchased that were connected to your passport should just automatically pop up. Sometimes, for example, if you shop at Olive Young, and Olive Young is also available for tax refund, they won't actually need to see your passport sometimes. They'll just give you the tax refund receipt, and it's not linked to your passport. So in those cases, you would have to scan that receipt at the airport to make sure that it would be linked to your passport and you could collect your tax refund. So let's say that you've scanned your passport, you've scanned additional receipts that were not originally linked to your passport, and all the list of goods that you bought that are eligible for a tax refund had popped onto the kiosk screen. It'll either tell you that you're all good to go, you can get your tax refund, or it will say something like ineligible for a tax refund. And if it says ineligible for a tax refund, that doesn't actually mean that you won't get your tax refund. That just means that you need to go and see an attendant at the kind of like goods check / tax free area. So if any of your goods are marked with something like ineligible for tax refund, or it needs to be checked by attendant or something like that, don't fret. It typically appears on like high price goods. So for example, like my Goyard tote had to be checked by an attendant, but I was still able to get the tax refund for the bag. So if you see that, all you need to do is collect your receipts again, and then go over to an attendant nearby. You can ask someone if you can't find it. It also shows you on the map where exactly you can find a live person attendant to talk to, and you just need to show them the good, show them the receipt, and then they'll stamp your receipt, and then you can show that receipt inside the terminal where you can get your actual tax refund. So the first kiosk where you scan your items and kind of get everything checked by an attendant if needed is just like a first step check. The actual area where you get your money for your tax refund is actually inside the terminal after you pass security and custom, or after you pass security and like border control. And so once you go through security and you scan your passport to be able to let into the terminal, I think it's at gate 28 is where you can scan your passport again, or show the receipt that you got your stamp on, and collect your physical money. So in terms of receipt, you can get physical cash, which I typically just choose to do. I think you can also get it through like a Chinese app. You can ask to get it for a credit card refund. So there's various different ways that you can get your refund, but again, that's basically how you would get your tax refund. So to recap, you go to the airport, you scan your passport, scan your receipts, get your items checked, and then to actually get the money from your tax refund, you have to go inside the airport terminal, go to gate 28-ish, I believe, and that's where you actually collect the money from all the tax refunds that you do. In terms of how much you get back for the tax refund, it varies, I believe, based on like what was bought / how much you purchased, but it's not like completely tax-free, because if you look on a Korean receipt, it'll tell you like how much the tax was. So for example, I think this was my ring from DD or Depot. It was priced at 398,000 won. The tax was 36,182 won. But the amount of tax that I can get back is not actually 36,182. It's less than that. I think it'll probably come out to like maybe 30,000 won or something around that, or a little bit less. You're not actually getting the full price back. You're just getting a percentage of the tax back, but it's most of the tax, I would say. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about was coming back into the US after you've made all these purchases. So something to remind everyone when they're shopping abroad is that the personal amount of goods that you can bring back into the US tax-free is $800 per person entering the US. If you're traveling with family members or you're traveling in a group, that $800 per person can be combined into like a lump sum. So for example, if I'm $800, I'm traveling with my mom and my brother, they also have $800, and the total amount of tax-free goods that we can bring back into the US is $2,400. So for example, if my mom and brother bought nothing, but I bought a bag that was like $2,000 or $2,400, whatever, something around the cost of our total allowance, I could use all their tax-free allowance because they didn't buy anything but were traveling in a group. Additionally, things that you bring back into the US, depending on what it is, so for example, leather goods or jewelry or whatever, they each have individual customs fees that you may or may not need to pay when entering the US with those items. So for example, typically leather goods that are made outside of Korea are taxed at around 9%. Over the $800 personal allowance that you have. So for example, if I bought a bag for $1,000 in Korea, but it was made outside of Korea, let's say it was made in France, I would basically declare that I brought something back into the US over $800, and I would be taxed on the amount over my $800 personal allowance. So if the bag was $1,000, I would subtract $800 from that, which would be $200, and then I would be taxed 9% on that $200 to pay as a customs fee at customs and duties. Another really important thing to remember is that Korea and America have a free trade agreement. So most of the things that you buy in Korea, if it was made in Korea, cannot be taxed. You won't have to pay a duty fee or customs fee on top of that when you bring that item back into the US. But if you bought it in Korea and it was made somewhere else, for example, it was made in Europe, those are still able to be taxed and pay a customs fee on to it outside of that Korea-US free trade agreement. So for example, my Dior bag actually, obviously I bought it in Korea and I bought it duty-free. Don't let that trick you. Just because you bought it at duty-free doesn't mean you know it's automatically going to be tax-free. Because this bag was made in Spain or Italy or whatever, I did have to pay a small duty fee on top of this. The Goyard bag, though, for example, was I actually traveled separately by myself, but my mom was with me in Korea and she came back to the US on a later date, so she brought back my Goyard bag for me, and she was traveling with my brother. So at the time, the Goyard bag was within their like $1,600 limit for personal taxes, so this didn't have to have any extra additional duty fees attached to it. So that's just something that's really important to remember when shopping in Korea or abroad in general. I think a lot of people aren't really aware of what necessarily needs to be declared and what kind of duty fees are applicable to certain types of items when they're traveling. And typically it is okay. A lot of people are lucky, and when they enter into the United States, maybe they're just unsure or the people let them pass or whatever, but this is the first time that I did have to pay duty on something. But luckily I was prepared because I understood, I'd read through documents, I understood what I could expect and how much I would be expected to pay. So I was just much more prepared, and that made me a lot less nervous going in, because if you do lie at duties and customs that you didn't buy anything, or the amount you spent was actually much higher than what you actually told the customs officer, you can be fined, your global entry can be revoked. So in these kind of cases, it's always important to be truthful about what you bought, how much you spent. Always keep your receipts and things like that, so you are being an upstanding citizen and whatnot, and you can just breeze through. Sure, you can pay a little bit, but in the grand scheme of things of how much you were able to get tax-free, it's actually, you're still saving a lot of money going into Korea and making purchases, even if you do have to pay some kind of customs or duty frees once you return to America. So I just wanted to include that so everybody's a little bit more aware, and I did all this research, and again, I'll include the links down below, but I don't think most people are aware, so something to just think about and keep in mind when you are doing your travels. Okay, bye.